Now, I know it's gonna sound crazy, and I know many of you will think I'm just clickbaiting you with this thumbnail, but alas, this time, it's real. We just had an insider talk about how Knull the Symbiote God is actually coming to live action. And in fact, Sony has very specific plans for Knull the Symbiote God. And we're gonna break down those plans in this video. And this is my favorite news story to talk about, one that is potentially absolutely incredible, and also in the hands of Sony, and therefore, absolutely terrifying. Holy shit, dude, they better not f up Knull. Now, this is the tweet that happened. This is why we're even talking about this. So this comes from My Time to Shine Hello, and she says, no Knull in Venom 3. Sony wants him as their ultimate villain for the spin-off verse, so they're keeping him for a crossover event. When I saw that tweet, I was like, what the f? Now, that's partially because I was already thinking that Knull was going to be in Venom 3. Like, when I initially saw the trailer, I was like, nah. But then so many people thought that Knull was in that trailer that I ended up taking a second and a third look, and I was like, oh. And on top of that, some other insiders and scoopers were hinting that Knull was coming to something, and a lot of us were like, oh, that's probably Venom 3. Oh my god. Sony's actually gonna throw one of the coolest freaking villains ever created last minute into their Venom trilogy. But according to My Time to Shine Hello, that's not what they're doing, but they are still going to do Knull. She says Sony wants him as their ultimate villain for the spin-off verse, and they're going to keep him for a crossover event. And number one, that sounds way better than throwing him into Venom 3 at the last minute of a trilogy. And I mean, that is potentially really freaking awesome. I mean, Knull is an incredible character. I've gushed about this character in many a video, in many a stream. He's super sinister. He has this awesome design. He beats all the Avengers in comics and like covers the whole planet in a giant symbiote. It was crazy. Like, there's a reason fans have wanted Knull for a long time. He's freaking awesome. And a crossover event implies multiple different projects coming together. And so they're saving Knull for the spin-off verse. I guess then the question is like, what is the spin-off verse? What does she mean when she says that? And unfortunately, I do think it means all the spin-off Sony movies. This includes Venom, this includes Morbius, this includes Madam Web, and this includes Craven. And it's like, oh boy, are we really about to see Morbius and Vulture pop up in a thing and fight Knull and be like, has something to do with Spider-Man, I think? Let's hope not. And I actually think there is evidence out there that Sony's doing something different than that. Because remember, over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of reports talking about Sony and Marvel and their deal together, Spider-Man 4. The rumors were that Sony wanted Spider-Man 4 to be very multiversal with Toby and Andrew, and Marvel Studios wanted it to be more grounded and just have it be about Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Well, in the midst of all of that discussion, there were other reports coming out from people like Daniel RPK that were saying Sony wants Toby, Andrew, and Tom not for something Spider-Man 4 related, not for something in the MCU, but for something outside of the MCU, that Sony has some kind of multiversal plan that they want to use the Spider-Boys for. Therefore, this whole idea of Knull being an ultimate villain could actually be connected to that, because let's be honest, nothing so far in any of the Sony movies hints towards Knull, I guess, other than a loose connection to the symbiote and the symbiotes in the Venom movie. And so there's hope that in this new thing, in this new spin-off verse, they pivot and get better creative people over there and start actually making some kick-ass movies, because Knull is freaking awesome for sure. And don't get me wrong, a ton of people will show up to see that, even if it's just your regularly scheduled Sony quality. But I don't think it's greedy to want more, to want better. And if Sony's really going to take a stab at Knull, like, come on, man, get some incredible people over there. Get Kevin Feige to help you guys out, because Knull is badass. That could legitimately be a $1 billion movie, something massive, but it has to be done right? At least a little bit more right than what Sony's been doing. But I will say the potential is there. I mean, this is super cool stuff. You could have Knull and building up to Knull, because, you know, the report says it's going to be a crossover event. That implies bringing in other franchises, like hopefully again not Morbius and stuff. Maybe it's the Across the Spider-Verse stuff, or even some of the stuff they're going to set up on Amazon with like Nicolas Cage. And I suppose there is the possibility that this is something that they think through with Kevin Feige, and it has something to do with Secret Wars. And then we come out of Secret Wars understanding Knull and the Void and darkness and light and the powers that be, and maybe the Spider Boys themselves, like Toby, Andrew, and Tom, continue their journey, and they grab up Tom Hardy, and now they've got Tom Hardy Venom, and maybe that's what they mean by crossover event. And there's also the talk of Spider-Man 2099 actually coming into live action. We talked about this in a video yesterday, and that's cool, dude. Miguel O'Hara's freaking awesome, and I would absolutely love to see that character teaming up with other Spider people to try to take on Knull the Symbiote God. But that kind of brings me to another question. That's like, what are they going to do with Tom Hardy? Because we thought this was his last appearance as Venom. I mean, the movie is called Venom The Last Dance. But in the Marvel comics that talk about Knull, that deal with the symbiote god and like him coming to Earth, Eddie Brock is a massive part of that story. He is this huge thing that ends up being the way the heroes are able to defeat Knull. And then even beyond that, what they do with Knull and what they do with Eddie in comics is fascinating, because Eddie is like becoming Knull, and he ends up like dying, but then going back in time because the symbiotes connect across all of time. It's this really weird story about like creation and time travel and paths, and now Eddie gets to like have a second chance at being alive, and there's this huge looming thing where Eddie could actually become Knull himself. And also, Eddie has a son, and his son ends up becoming Venom. I don't know, that's a lot. It's a lot of nerdy stuff. Like, it's super crazy. The question is, like, how far is Sony going to go with this? How much of the comic book stuff are they adapting? And basically, are they doing more stuff with Tom Hardy? Because Tom Hardy, probably the best part of everything they're doing over in live action over there. I hope that he's in Secret Wars in some capacity, and I hope that if they do Knull, they do Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock with him. I would legitimately be excited to go watch a Knull film, though. Like, if they do this big crossover movie, bring in a ton of the different Spider-Men and maybe do a Spider-Verse type thing, but they're fighting Knull in the multiverse or something like that. Like, I'm definitely showing up. That sounds freaking awesome, dude. I would love it. And it can't be worse than what Marvel Studios did with Gore the God Butcher and Thor Love and Thunder. So there's the report, guys, coming from a very reliable insider, even though she doesn't get everything wrong, and I don't love what she does all the time, and I'm kind of sick of the scoopers. Like, we gotta be honest, she's good. She's gotten a lot of stuff right. If My Time to Shine is saying this, it's very likely actually being planned over at Sony. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.